Welcome to the Pleasure Program. My name is Holly.
I'm Victoria.
We're two licensed therapists specializing in sex therapy, and today we are reacting to a Reddit post related to someone's sex life. Okay, Victoria, the post I'm about to read from Reddit here you have not heard before, so let's jump in. The title of this post is, "I think my husband is gay." I have been with my husband for 3 years. This is a 23-year-old female and a 26-year-old male. We have issues like any other couple, but for the most part, our relationship is fine. Our sex life is pretty good, although I know he has been with upward of 50 women before me, which has made me a bit insecure. But other than that, I've never really thought anything of it. He is working a job out of town for a year, and his computer is logged into his Google and email. I got on yesterday and his search history from his phone popped up a website called Doublelist and a bunch of porn. I had never heard of Doublelist, so I clicked on it to find out that it's pretty much a Craigslist for sex. I then got on his email and searched Doublelist to find that he has had an account since 2017, as well as a Craigslist personal account to talk to men. From what I can tell, he stopped right before we got together, besides this last time yesterday where he logged on. But the messages I have read between him and the other men are so explicit and things I would have never imagined coming from him, like being a bottom, getting rimmed, etc. He is super hyper masculine, and now I just feel like it's all a cover up. He admitted to doing it, but said it is only because of a porn addiction and that he needs more and more extreme, and it's like chasing a tail. But I don't believe him. He has been with so many women while doing this on top of it. He says he's not gay, and I don't have anything against it, but this is my life and my marriage too, and I feel like knowing he has went on the website just yesterday and the history of talking to men about having sex and whatever else and not even knowing about it is crazy. I think he is scared to admit he is gay. I don't know what to believe now. What would you do and how do you go about it? Or if you're a man, how did you realize you were gay or bi? Is this normal for a man to do? I just want to understand from his perspective too. Am I wrong for freaking out?
Okay. First clarifier, with him going on the website, was he looking at porn or was he talking to men explicitly from the yesterday?
It sounds like she saw his history and that
Okay.
he had been on this website called Doublelist, which is an interactive site for meeting men. It's like a Craigslist for sex.
Okay.
And
I
a
didn't know if he was
history of
watching
porn.
or if he was
Both.
talking to someone.
I think both. I think
Because I think that might be different depending on people's definitions of what cheating is, right? Some people would find watching porn cheating. Some people would not find that cheating, and some people would find talking to a male cheating. But it doesn't seem like that's her concern here anyway, so I guess it doesn't really matter. I guess the big concern here is whether or not he's gay,
right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting. I wonder if this is more about like trust and honesty, right? Like they've been together 3 years, I believe, if I remember right.
Says that they've been
And
together 3 years. Mm-hmm.
and he was really open about his sexual history with 50 women, right? Not everyone discloses in depth that kind of detail, and he did. So I could see being blindsided by feeling like your partner was upfront and honest about their sexual history, but then finding out that they hid it from you, which could feel like a lie.
Yeah. It is interesting because she's focusing on, is my husband gay? Is this normal for a man? How did other men discover that they were gay or maybe bi? And yeah, my mind goes right to, sure, that's a part of this, perhaps, but what about the secrets and
Right.
the dishonesty? What about the what red flag might this be that he's out of town for work for a year, and she's seeing that he's logged in to this account.
Right.
That sounds like if it's a Craigslist for sex, I'm assuming that this is a meetup. This is a like we meet people for hookups.
And maybe this is how she's coping with that, right? Like in some capacity, some people can normalize, like, oh well, if they're gay or if they're bisexual, they must just feel like shame about it. That's why they lied to me, right? Like
Mm,
that makes the lying okay. Whereas like if he's not gay or bisexual or whatever, maybe that's lying is really bad. So maybe that's how she's
mm,
coping with the secrecy and the dishonesty, by being so focused on whether or not he's gay, to have
mm.
more empathy for the secrecy and not have 3 years blow up.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I find interesting too? She confronts him about it. He admits to it
Yeah.
and says it's because he has a porn addiction. And she kind of
Mm.
just glosses right by that and says, but I don't believe him. And I'm curious, when we think about porn addiction or sex addiction, um, what do you think about that, Victoria?
I think that that could be extremely reasonable.
Mm,
Absolutely. When people have a porn addiction, they usually will escalate to some capacity. Either they're watching it more frequently or for longer periods of time, or
mm-hmm,
they're watching more taboo or extreme videos, right? So I could see that being realistic, where maybe what he was watching was not doing it for him. And so he had to escalate and escalate and escalate with this
mm-hmm.
kind of addiction. Um, and if you're experiencing a sexual addiction, the same thing that might be escalated as well. I don't think that that's unreasonable, that we should just gloss over that.
Right. I'm also thinking about him disclosing to her that he had 50
Mm,
female partners. Now, we don't know if that was fully honest or if that is a combination of men and women.
right.
Um, but he's 26 years old. He's 26 years old.
Yeah.
What do you make of 50 sexual partners by the age of 26?
I don't know that that's uncommon with, yeah, absolutely. I don't know that that's uncommon with college and casual hookups between Tinder and college parties. I'm actually hearing that not infrequently in terms of, I don't want to call it a body count, but
I mean,
yeah.
I'm definitely not one to shame people for whatever, however many partners they've had. However, for
Yeah.
looking at the big picture, is that a part of maybe the big
Yeah.
picture of, is there a problem here with maybe not only porn addiction but sex addiction that is at such a young age? That's a lot of partners.
Mm.
You don't think that's a lot of partners, Victoria? What?
Not in today's, I don't know, I hear about it all the time. People are just
What?
constantly having casual sex, whether it's on like one nighters all the time, whether it's Tinder, whether it's college parties. Like, think about it. Like if he's 26, if he had one new partner a month for 5 years, 4 of those years being in college, that's 50 partners. Like it's really not unreasonable with the party culture and the Tinder culture.
Okay. It's interesting because some of the people commenting on the post was like, I'm sorry, but this number of
Yeah,
partners at this young of an age is likely a sex addiction. But maybe that,
could be.
if culturally casual sex is becoming a lot more normalized,
It
maybe
seems
that's,
that way.
yeah, maybe that's not as indicative as initially you would think. So, yeah, I mean, in thinking about porn addiction, sex addiction, I don't think we should disregard that because it very well could be the situation here, and that would really help determine maybe what next steps this couple takes or this her husband takes moving forward, right? So, if we think about like the definition of an addiction, it's the use or misuse of a substance or behavior that becomes compulsive and continues despite negative consequences. So, if he's feeling a compulsion in regards to viewing pornography or sexting, sex chatting with people on the internet, or even meeting up with people,
Yeah.
doesn't matter if it's really men or women. Um, I know she's focused on that, but in terms of like this being a possible addiction, if there's a compulsive element of that, and he continues despite negative consequences, those negative consequences might look like it affecting your marriage, keeping secrets, being
Hmm.
dishonest. Sometimes it can create issues around erectile dysfunction for men. Time away, like a long period of time fixated on having sex, viewing pornography, not spending time doing other things that you would otherwise enjoy, like, or need to do, like work, socializing, hobbies. So it can become all consuming for people.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then a full-time job of keeping secrets as well.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that comes to mind for me is I do think it's very possible that he could be having sexual activity with men and not be gay, right? Like she mentioned rimming and different sexual acts, and I'm wondering if he is normal, right? Like most men, where they experience pleasure via some sort of anal play because of the prostate and because of nerve endings, but maybe he feels shame around engaging that with a woman because that can be common or possible, but engaging with a man, that's kind of expected maybe, and that feels more normalized and safe. So maybe this has to do with his pleasure as well in terms of why he's going towards the male population, but not necessarily having a certain sexual identity around it.
That's possible. And another thought I had was, again, we don't know if the messages she read between him and the other men were indicative of a meet up, an actual physical sexual experience, or if this was all sort of in a fantasy sex chatting kind of way. But often there's an escalation in when it comes to porn addiction or sex addiction, there's an escalation in the content that is happening there. So sometimes that content in pornography, or maybe the fantasies that that person's pursuing, doesn't match their sexual orientation, because they're looking for something a little more shocking or taboo to get that dopamine hit that they are used to having.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair.
We do have a video that kind of does a deep dive on porn addiction, that talks about sort of the brain chemistry related to that we will link in the description box if you want to learn more about that. I think the biggest hurdle for this couple is probably going to be the trust breach that has happened here in some form, with him being gone for a year, out of town for work for a year, and he's jumping on this site, being away from home. That has to breed so many trust issues. Like, well, why were you going in this site? Were you going to meet up with somebody, or were you just gonna have some sort of sex chat with men? I think that this couple needs couples therapy, and if he is saying, I have a porn addiction problem, believe him, and he needs to pursue treatment.
Absolutely.
And I don't know how that could be done with there being that distance for a year. I don't know where they're at in the whole that year-long job that he's on, but I think that some really big decisions would need to be made for this relationship to repair. I think that would be really, really hard to do, being so far apart.
Yeah, absolutely. But I agree with you.
Yeah, and it sounds maybe a little childish, but there are parental controls and website blockers that can be installed on phones and computers, and doesn't mean the wife here needs to be like in that role, but if he starts treatment to address the addiction that he is saying he has, there are some, we call them external locus of control, some barriers he can implement externally to try to create that barrier between accessing these sites and this porn, as he does the work internally to try to address and heal and recover from this issue.
He just has to want to do it.
He has to want to do it, and then also they have to work on, the how this is impacting the relationship.
Yeah.
And if there is a sexual orientation aspect to this, I mean, there's just like a lot of layers, He's going to need some support around accepting that part of himself. And what does this mean to be bisexual, or if he identifies as being gay, he's married to a woman. So what does that mean moving forward? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, this does seem like a really big revelation for this wife to
Yeah.
stumble upon. And it means a lot, I think, about what needs to happen next for the two of them.
Yeah. A lot to unpack together.
We'll open it up to our viewers. What do you think? Do you think this means he's gay? Do you believe that this is more of an addiction? Maybe both? And what suggestions would you have?
Thank you for watching.